All right, so welcome to the fourth installment of the online network of independent learning professionals. Today we've got an incredible speaker, Pugh. He's going to talk about introducing an e-learning solution into an organization, so that's going to be really awesome. And just like we did last week, it's going to be an interactive panel. So we've got 4 people on the panel. I'll introduce them once Ant is done. And we've taken your questions that you've submitted, and we're going to answer as many as we can get to. And I'll also ask for some audience participation throughout the way so we can make this as interactive as possible. I am going to go ahead and switch it over to Ant and give him control. So Ant, it is all yours.
Cool, thanks Patti. I'm just going to try and set this up so that you guys can see my screen.
Perfect.
Okay, saying I cannot start screen share while the other participant is sharing.
Oh, okay. How about now?
Yeah, it looks good. You should be able to see my pretty cover slide soon. Just let me know if you can see that.
We can. And also don't forget to introduce yourself too.
Okay, I will. I'm going to, as I click the slides, just let me know if the slides are moving, because I remember a couple of weeks ago, I think somebody did a presentation and some of the slides didn't quite get broadcast. So just give me a shout if there's any problems there. And Patti, I'll also let you keep an eye on the chat window, because I don't think I'm going to be able to talk and keep my eyes peeled on that too. So typical guy can't multitask, that's me.
Absolutely, so, don't worry about that. And that is a good thing, just really quick, if anybody has questions while Ant is talking, just feel free to chat, and we'll get to them at the end.
Cool. Well, thanks for the intro, Patti. Yeah, a quick introduction. My name's Ant. I've been in training for sort of 15 years, e-learning for about sort of 8 or 9 years. Just started my own business at the start of 2015, so you know, really getting a lot of value out of this group already. Yeah, I'm just going to do a quick presentation really about, as the title says, introducing an e-learning solution into an organisation. And a bit of background to the reason I'm doing this talk is basically I did a full-time job. I started with this company at the start of 2011. I was working for a big organisation that didn't have any e-learning, and I just thought it was a great case study, because from the point of joining the company, my remit was to introduce e-learning to the business. And I left that company at the end of 2014, and within that 3-year period of time, I really kind of got a great overview of seeing how e-learning can benefit a business. I made loads of mistakes. You know, if I could go back and do it again, I'd have done a lot of things very differently. But I want to kind of give an overview of how that project went, because I'm sure some of you will be working with clients who are, you know, looking at implementing a e-learning solution, and you can maybe offer some value to your clients with you know, additional information. I'm sure some of you have you know, implemented LMS yourself as well, so I'm sure a lot of this will resonate with you. But yeah, I'll just go through some sort of an overview of the project, and then at the end I'm going to talk about 5 key takeaways, sort of things that I learned that I would maybe do differently, or tips that I would recommend if you're involved in a project like this yourself. So the company I work for, can you see a picture of a big office there, guys? Give me a thumbs up. Cool. Okay. So the company I work for is called Inmarsat. That probably means nothing to you. I'd never heard of them when I joined, but they are a huge satellite telecommunications company. So the main difference between normal telecommunication and satellite telecommunication is, as the name suggests, all of the information is passed via satellite. So just to sort of explain how that works, these satellites, this company had 12 of these satellites circulating about 35,000 kilometers above the Earth's surface. So if you can imagine, wherever you are on the Earth's surface, if you were to fly an aeroplane right around the globe back to where you are, that's about 40,000 kilometers, I think. So these satellites are located right up in the Earth's atmosphere, and they relay signals back down to Earth. So excuse me if I'm, you know, making this sound obvious if you know about this, but I had no idea about this, so I found it quite interesting. So if you're, for example, in the middle of the ocean on a ship, if any of you have been on a cruise ship before and made a telephone call or connected to the very slow internet on there, that will have been done via satellite communication. Or if you're in the middle of the desert, on top of a mountain, or I think one of the examples that a lot of us are seeing more of nowadays is if you go on a long-haul flight, you may see that you've got the option to make telephone calls or connect to the internet. Whether or not we want to be connecting to the internet while we're on an airplane is a different story. I think we're all quite enjoy having that bit of time where we're not connected. But that was the type of example. So you can see in the images, you've got these people with satellite telephones. Their connection is routed up to the satellite and then relayed back down to land earth stations, and that call is then connected, or you can connect and receive the emails. So that's the premise of the business. Now, it was a really interesting project because it wasn't a project where I was delivering, or we were delivering e-learning or training to the employees. The project was actually to deliver training to the distribution channel. So Inmarsat, the company I worked for, was the wholesaler, and it would provide bandwidth, products and services to a distribution channel. The top tier was a sort of a distribution partner model where they'd have about 50 partners who they sold these internet and telephone services to, and those distribution partners would sell that onto resellers. They would add on value, add on price as well. Obviously, if you're making phone calls from the back of a jumbo jet, you're going to be paying a premium price, and then that would be then down to the end user. So the remit for the project was to deliver training to this distribution network. When I joined the company, the training was being delivered purely by face-to-face, classroom trainers, of which there were 8 trainers. So they already had the training infrastructure within the business, but they hadn't started delivering any online content. These trainers were traveling up to 90% of the year, so doing a lot of sort of traveling around, teaching sort of small groups. So with only 8 trainers, their ability to deliver to lots of people was quite limited. And these were highly skilled technical trainers. Some of them were actual rocket scientists. So when you hear the phrase, it's not rocket science, that's actually something that we did come up against working for this company. But these guys were delivering, the same training over and over again. It was quite high level. They were very specialist technical trainers, but they weren't able to use that skill set because they were just repeating the same high level training. So this company was really crying out for e-learning, and it was a perfect opportunity, which was great because it stood me in good stead. So what did this company want? Well, they didn't really know what they wanted when I joined the company. They were a bit sort of, I got the classic pile of PowerPoint presentations dumped on my desk, and can you convert this into e-learning? We want some videos, all that kind of stuff that I'm sure you guys have heard many times before. So it was kind of my job to kind of come up with a bit of a scope for what the solution would look like. The first thing we identified is that the content would need to be dynamic. So I'm sure you know what this means, but we wanted to be able to deliver different content to different groups of. Hey, leader, can you just mute the microphone, please? Thank you. Cool. So yeah, dynamic content. We wanted to be able to deliver different content to different people. So it may be that one particular group of customers would be selling one type of product. A different group of customers would be selling a different type of product. So we wanted to be able to direct the content at these different groups. Unlike within a sort of an employee situation, if you were launching a learning management system to employees, it's probably quite easy to go to the human resources department and say, can you print me off a list of all of the employees, and then we can upload that into the LMS from the back end. With the solution we wanted to provide, we wanted to allow people to register themselves, and this would be done with criteria such as their email address, and we would allocate a certain amount of user accounts for each company or each customer. I won't go into mobile enabled, but I think I'm a bit skeptical about mobile learning. I mean, obviously it's a fantastic thing, but it's something that people always say they want, but actually when you put some thought into it, can we create content that is for mobile and for desktop? And when I did some research, I embedded Google Analytics into the mobile side of things, and I think 99.7 or 99.8% of the the visits to this LMS were being accessed via the laptops, via desktops. So, you know, they said in the beginning it needed to be mobile compatible, but actually people weren't accessing it. But it was important that, especially from an administration point of view, we could log on, see our progress from the LMS, see who was taking the courses, and all of that side of things was mobile enabled. The LMS had to have manager dashboards, so the ability for key stakeholders within the business to be able to see how their customers were doing with the training, see what they were accessing, seeing what they were downloading, see if they had, you know, got stuck with any of the content. They wanted the ability to have downloadable content as well. So some of the customers were located in quite sort of isolated areas where they maybe didn't have the best internet connection. So they wanted to be able to download the content, take that away, maybe off-site onto an oil rig or onto a ship, and then access that content on their device. As I mentioned before, the training team was spread quite thin, and they were doing all of the administration of setting up and managing their classroom training themselves. So we wanted a solution that was going to be able to manage that functionality of setting up classrooms, booking equipment, organising wait lists, sending registration details, sending, you know, calendar invitations. Certification, obviously certain customers needed to have certain certification to be able to sell products and services. So having certification within the system was essential. And as a longer term strategy, they wanted to provide some kind of e-commerce solution. So further down the line, if the training was up to a certain standard, they wanted to be able to resell that to maybe customers who weren't spending much money with them, or maybe even competitors who needed that kind of training, and they could make some money or get a return on investment on the training that they created. So the solution that we came up with was a platform called Nebula. Now you can see in the top right hand corner, that was a name that we gave to the solution. It's built on a platform. If you squint, you might be able to see in the bottom right hand corner it says Absorb, which is the name of the learning management system. It's a kind of mid-level system. So some of you, I know from chatting to you guys on Slack already, some of you are familiar with Cornerstone, SumTotal, some of these big LMS. Absorb, the system that we use, is nowhere near as powerful as that, but it's much more advanced than some of the more basic LMS that are out there. So it was a great starting point for us because it offered most of the features that we needed without being, you know, overly complicated and overly expensive. So that was the solution we opted for. I've just got a few screenshots here showing you some of the interface, but I really like this system. As you can see, it looks quite smart. It was easy to customize. We were able to add, you know, our own branding, so it really felt like an Inmarsat system, which we thought was great. So yeah, and this is just a quick example of some of the content we created. As I said, when I arrived, they gave me a big pile of PowerPoint and said, look, can you convert this into e-learning? And one of the challenges was creating the content, because obviously it takes a long time to create an e-learning course. We had to make some sacrifices. If you look in the top left corner, you can see that a lot of the stuff we did was just PowerPoint, and we got the subject matter experts to deliver the training session as if they were in a classroom, and we just used Camtasia to record the screen. They spoke into a microphone, and we just chopped that up and edited it down, and it was fantastic. I mean, it wasn't the most engaging or effective e-learning, and I'm sure many of you who are e-learning purists will wince at me saying that we delivered that, but actually it provides a quick win, you know, and if we hadn't have done that, we wouldn't have had the ability to have delivered the solution as quickly as we did. So statistics, just some random ones. I won't read them all out, but we got some. These are statistics taken from the point in time when I left the company, which was the end of the second year of the LMS having been launched. One of the notable statistics there is that it was now being accessed in over 56 countries, which was a real milestone, because I think the trainers, between the 8 trainers that were traveling, they'd only ever been to, I think, under 30 countries between them. So we had already doubled the amount of reach that the physical classroom training was being able to access. And now it's just kind of the sort of lessons I learned. I'm aware of time, so I know we're sort of, I apologise if I'm rushing through this, but I just want to make sure I get through all of the components I wanted to mention. So the first sort of lesson I learned really is that it was and I probably didn't really do this. If I could go back and start again, I could have a much better go at this. But the lesson learned would be that I would start small. And what I mean by that is I was very keen to deliver training to every single person who was a customer of Inmarsat. And that probably wasn't the right tactic. I probably should have launched to a specific group of people. For example, I might have said, right, I'm going to create training for customer service staff, and just focused on that group. Or I could have said, just the people who work in sales. And then once I delivered that measurable training, and I got some positive results from that particular course or content, I could go back to management and say, look, we've had a positive outcome. We've got the statistics to prove that that was positive. Can we roll this out with a larger number of a bigger audience, if you like? But that's something that I obviously learned the hard way. But so number 2, educate and promote. Obviously, the LMS itself is educating customers. That's not quite what I mean by this. What I'm talking about here is actually educating other people within the business to explain the benefits of a learning management system. I don't think people definitely people who work outside of our industry probably don't grasp how incredible learning management systems are. And what we used to do, actually, we ran a series of training courses, just sort of 1-hour workshops where we would explain what functionality the LMS can provide, and just giving them a bit of research, a bit of information about things like, did you know that you could go to a website like Coursera, download off-the-shelf e-learning courses, and then we can upload those. So you go away and pick them. We can upload those and deliver them to your specific audience. We're not just saying that we're the only people who can upload and deliver content. We want you guys to take ownership of that as well, and you can go away and really use this system as your own and deliver content to your audience. Just 3 more, Patti. Now I'm running over slightly, but I'll just be another couple of minutes. The 3rd tip is cost and time, double it. So I think it's quite a cliche to always say that you always need to project plan, and when you're doing costings for projects to sort of double the budget that you expect to be paying. And that was exactly right for me. I kind of went into this project expecting it to take a certain amount of time to build, a certain amount of time to create the content, and a certain cost involved. And I pretty much, every single plan I created took double the amount of time, and I spent twice the amount of budget, which obviously, had a negative impact because it looked like I hadn't planned properly, but at the same time, because of the positive response that the system received, was actually overlooked, and it was all okay. But if you are planning a project like this, I would definitely recommend doubling your estimation for cost and time. My 4th tip is that expectations will increase. When we launched the system, I was really expecting, people to be coming back. Oh, fantastic! This is what we've been waiting for. This is brilliant. This is going to revolutionise how we learn about new products and services. And whilst we did receive some fantastic feedback, one of the things that we noticed straight away was people were saying, well, that's brilliant, but why have we not got this training for this product or that service or this particular issue that we have? And by delivering a system like this, it just actually piled on the pressure, and people were expecting a lot higher quality content across all different products and services. And we really raised the bar, and people were expecting a lot more high quality content. So it just meant that we had a lot more work to do, but which is a good thing to have. But at the same time, just be aware that may be something that happens. Oh, wrong way, sorry. And the last one, it's a pretty obvious statement. A great LMS means nothing without great content. But I think, just having a sort of a snazzy LMS with all the bells and whistles, gamification, social features, all these things that this learning management systems can support, that's just the very first rung of the ladder. And, none of us would log into Facebook each night when we get home from work if we didn't have any friends on there. If there's no content going into Facebook, just because it's a nice platform doesn't mean anyone's going to log in and use it. And the same goes for the LMS. It's so important to have a really robust content roadmap where you're constantly updating, the LMS with new content. And this obviously really involves a strategy to think about: are you going to recruit instructional designers to work internally and develop the content? Are you going to recruit externally and bring in external freelancers or consultants, as I should say, to create the content? But obviously, that's a really important part of the strategy, and important to think about that before you get started. So that's me. Thanks for listening. One last thing I just wanted to say, I've been working this year primarily on designing custom e-learning courses, as I know many of you guys are doing. But what I'm really looking to do with my business now is kind of pivot a little bit and to work more with companies on developing e-learning strategy and working with them to implement learning management systems and this whole LMS solution. If any of you are working with companies and they're looking for sort of advice and guidance on how to do this successfully, and even if it's just some support with how to get started, choosing the LMS, all that kind of thing, please bear me in mind. I'd be really grateful if you could mention my name if it's out of your remit and you don't have that option to do that. Just think of me. That would be great. But if you've got any questions, hopefully we've got time for a couple of questions if there are any. I'll be happy to answer those.
Thank you so much, Ant. That was fascinating. And we do have a couple of questions. One is from Christy, and she's wondering, when you did the quick PowerPoint to Camtasia courses, did you also plan for improving them in the long term?
Yeah, it's a good question. What we did is actually we broke it down into kind of 3 tiers of courses. We said we've got our top tier of courses, which we'll spend a lot of time and money on, which will be maybe things like the product, because they would be used by customers. And we had a second tier, which was slightly less investment, slightly less time. Maybe I think we've all used it. You're probably all familiar with the terminology. I've heard it quite a lot this year. People talking about level 1, level 2, and level 3 courses. So we kind of try to use that scale. And part of the strategy was to actually say, look, a lot of this content is only going to be seen maybe by a small group of people, or there's so much of the content, it's going to be impossible to put into a really flashy, interactive e-learning course. Or maybe the content is only going to be relevant for 3 months, and therefore there's no point in investing a lot of time and money in creating content that's going to be irrelevant in 6 months' time. So we tried to be quite strategic about it. And I think when I started the project, I was very keen for everything to be perfect, everything to look really smart, everything to be the most engaging content possible. But I quickly realized that that's not realistic. And actually, a lot of the time, it's just important that our content is being delivered. And if it's better than nothing, if they weren't receiving any of this training before and they're now getting something, that was an improvement on nothing. So, because of limitations of time, we had to sort of make sacrifices and deliver not the best e-learning, if you like. Okay, awesome. Thank you for that information. We have time for one more question if anybody has any. If not, I have a question. So I'm going to go ahead and ask mine. I don't see any coming in the chat yet. So the LMS that you used, it looks like it was called Absorb, and so it's just like a very customizable LMS. Is that kind of what it was, like a shell? Yeah, not quite a shell. I mean, a lot of them do have quite a lot of restrictions, as much as of what you can choose. If I go back, so with this example, we could choose which of these tiles we saw. So these ones here, we choose the layout of the tiles. They had this really nice feature which was called banners, where you could really create a nice marketing banner, which was the first thing that a learner saw when they log in. And I thought that was brilliant because it really kind of stands out when you log into the system. And all of that content was dynamic as well, so you could tailor it to the person who's logged in. So what one person, if we were particularly pushing a piece of content to everybody in America, that might be different to what people in the UK see when they log in. And it was very easy to kind of dynamically assign the content. But it wasn't completely customizable, but it had quite a few bells and whistles and things that we could add and remove. With this one, actually, there was you got the basic LMS, and then there was an additional module called the Mercury module, which we did pay for, which had these more advanced functionality built in. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So a couple of quick questions, and we have about 3 minutes left, and then we're going to transition to the interactive Q&A. So Doreen has a question. Did you have the LMS managed by the e-learning team or HR? She said the disconnect between the groups is what causes her the most trouble. Yeah, it's a great question, that is, because I've seen the same problem myself. Now, this LMS, as I mentioned at the start, was primarily aimed at the customer base, and because of that, the training department didn't sit within the HR department. However, what happened after about 12 months of setting up the LMS, we suddenly realized that probably about 50% of the people using the LMS were employees, and people within the business started, wanting to use the LMS to deliver training to their employees, which was fantastic, but that wasn't the initial strategy. So what we started doing was working a bit more closely with the human resources department, and and giving them, for example, administrator access so they could deliver their own content to employees, and it would sit alongside the content that the customers would see. I don't know if that, so the disconnect, it was tough. And actually what happened is we kind of, as an e-learning team, so I was technically the e-learning manager. I recruited a learning management system administrator and 2 instructional designers after about a year. So we were a team of 4. And what happened actually after about 18 months is that team kind of moved away from the training team and sat in its own little department, because it didn't really fit with training side by side, even though it did have a lot of relevance, and it didn't really fit into HR. So it kind of sort of ended up floating around on its own.
Okay. And the last question is going to be from Sean, and he's wondering, how long were the video sessions? Were you translating day-long courses into recorded session, or just critical topic?
Yeah, good question. So I brought up on the screen a screenshot of how the courses were broken down. So you can see here individual lessons. And I think one of my biggest gripes about using Storyline is that when you create a course, you're creating a kind of 20-minute, 40-minute module, and it's all embedded into this kind of SCORM wrapper. And if you upload that into an LMS, it just looks like a lesson, and you can't see from looking at that whether it's going to be 30 seconds long or 30 minutes long. And with the functionality of these LMS these days, as you can see here, these lessons that you can see on the screen, we really wanted to keep each individual lesson down to sort of between 2 and 10 minutes, so that it was easy to just jump in and out. And if you've got a specific question or you need to learn something specific, you're not having to sift through a whole 30-minute course to find it. So to answer the question, we basically broke the lessons, the videos down into anything from between 2 and sort of 10 minutes. And if you use Camtasia, you may be familiar with a feature called markers, where you can drop markers individually located along the timeline. And when you produce that video, you can choose to break the video down into individual smaller videos based on the location of the markers. And that's what we used to do. We used to create a 2-hour video, put these markers at 5 to 10 minute intervals, and then when we pressed export, it would chop them all up for us, and we could upload them as individual videos. Takes longer to create and upload in the LMS, but I think the value you get out of that is definitely worth it.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much, Ant. Everyone, let's give Ant a round of applause, or write in the chat. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. This is super helpful, and I really appreciate that. Yes.
Thanks, guys.